We're live and venturing into the AFC South for the first time, also battling technical issues both on Dan's side and on my side, some slow internet. So hopefully all this works just fine today. So we're covering the Indianapolis Colts today, 20-minute draft recap with Dan. How are you doing?
I am doing well. To everybody listening to this live or after, we had some funky weather in my area in Indiana or the Midwest for anybody who's out there. I had funky weather. A lightning strike hit a pole. That lightning went down on the pole through the wires to my house and fried my whole Wi-Fi system. It destroyed some light bulbs. It destroyed a TV in my house. All my Wi-Fi infrastructure is completely gone. So that's what I'm dealing with right now. So I am currently in my car right now recording. That's why I'm dark this round, because I have no Wi-Fi at my house.
Well, Dan's a trooper, so we're going to get right to it with the Indianapolis Colts, and we can almost go right to the draft because it was a very quiet off season. I want to tee off on a subject right away, and that's really so many choices, and we knew this going in. So many choices at pick 15. Cornerback Mitchell, cornerback Arnold, defensive tackle Murphy, any of the top three pass rushers, including Latu. I knew they would have choices at this point, and they chose Latu. Let's get right into the draft. What do you think about that choice of 15? Is that the way you would have gone? Was there a bad choice to be made? How do you feel about the first round?
Well, this was an odd draft, just the way how the top was with all those quarterbacks, offensive linemen. You had the tight end out of Georgia, Bowers. So the Colts really had 3 or 4 top 10 guys this year to choose from in other drafts, but just the way that top worked out, they could pick anybody they wanted. I thought the entire time, or at least most of the time, that a defensive lineman was in play for them at pick 15. Just the way Chris Ballard likes to draft. He likes trench guys. Quiddy Pay really hasn't panned out very well. DeForest Buckner got an extension, but he's getting up there in age, and they do have an out for him soon. So I thought Byron Murphy might have been in play. And then with the edge rushers, Gus Bradley wants a pass rush. He wants a 4-man pass rush and then the secondary to cover. Think of those Seattle days of Legion of Boom. That's where he comes from. He wants a easy pass rush, or at least not be able to blitz. He wants his guys to get home and get a pass rush, and that'll help the secondary. And you saw it last year that poor that secondary was. So at pick 15, you really were just coming down to what do you value the most, because there were 4 options there. So I like the Latu pick. I am still concerned about the neck issue long term, just because I'm never a fan of drafting players with neck or back issues, because one hit and you're permanently done with them and they just retire. That's a wasted pick. But I liked it. Looking back at it, maybe Murphy, just because it's really hard to find good defensive tackles and you just had a guy come down to your lap. Maybe Terrion Arnold was another good option, because he's a press man corner and they really needed some corner help last year. So it really comes down to what do you value. I don't think there's really a wrong choice there, because all 3 or 4 guys were valuable. So I like the pick at 15. It was just going to come down to what do you value the most.
Yeah, Olatu, fine player, one of the certainly deserving of that particular rank. I had him in a draft range of 8 to 19 on my board, so fits right in there. This, for me, after covering Indianapolis and the entire NFL, drafts for decades, was one of Indianapolis' better drafts overall, with one exception, because they never really did pivot back to cornerback, as you see on the slide there, until pick 201. But they did a lot of nice things. They got more players with some value than I'm used to for the Colts. The Colts have basically added complementary talent over the last 2-3 drafts, in my opinion. But I like the double dip on the offensive line. We know that the return game is going to be different this year, because a whole mess of kicks are going to be returned this year as compared to last year, because of the new rules. And Anthony Gould is probably one of the top 2 or 3 targets in terms of the return game. And Mitchell adds another piece at wide receiver. He was very good at Texas. Missing a cornerback, got a couple of safeties. In general, they've stocked a number of positions. Doesn't completely match my top need of cornerback, but walk us through your opinion of what they did in the draft, how they did, any nuggets you have for any of these draft choices.
When you look up and down their picks, they had 2 or 3 very big needs that they hit. They needed another pass rusher. Alex Pierce has not panned out as the number 2 wide receiver behind Michael Pittman. So that second round pick, Adonai Mitchell, he fell because of the character concerns. So that was a great value pick. My guess is he's going to be the number 2 wide receiver long term, if not this year. And then the picks 3 and pick 4. Ryan Kelly was drafted in 2016. If you can believe it, that was 8 years ago. This is his last year. He's an unrestricted free agent going into next offseason. So with that pick 4, that might be the guy long term who the Colts will go with. So you have his replacement. He doesn't need to play right away. He can learn the system and develop. And then in 2026, Brandon Smith will be a free agent. That's their right tackle. Or Matt, the Congaves, whose name I cannot pronounce still, he did play some games at left tackle. He played some games at right tackle. So if you want to move him to the left side and try him out, you can do that with him in round 3. And I thought that was a good pick because the left tackle hasn't really been all that special for the Colts the last few years. So that's what I think they're trying to do. They're trying to replace offensive linemen, not necessarily for this year, but for next season, and have those guys ready and continue along with Anthony Richardson in this offense. I thought those were 2 good picks long term, just because it is hard to find good offensive linemen and getting some continuity. And you see it up and down in the NFL. The return game you mentioned with the Oregon State wide receiver, he will be a little speedster guy. He's not very big, but that doesn't bother me in the return game. And once again, Ballard and late round safeties. He's taken a safety every single year since 2019. And this is the second time in the last 4 drafts that he's taken 2 safeties in one class. I don't know why he keeps doing that. Maybe he can't scout safeties. Maybe there's something he values there. I cannot figure out why they keep doing it because you've drafted so many and I don't think they play very well. So the cornerback is going to be the issue going again this year. They had some guys last year, some young guys playing, but they were hurt, weren't practicing. And then the secondary overall was just coming in and out each and every other week because so many guys were hurt. So I do think the secondary has potential to be better, but I need to see it first. And their round 2 pick last year, Juju Brents, the Kansas State cornerback, he missed 7 games and he looked promising. He's a bigger cornerback. So I expect the cornerbacks to be much more stable this year compared to last year, but they need to prove it. And they have depth on the offensive line after this class if those rookies pan out.
Yeah. So, it's pretty good draft. I actually had the second safety, the Auburn safety, rated higher than the Missouri safety. And I had the Wisconsin center rated a little bit higher. I think there's more boom bust in the Pittsburgh tackle guard. He doesn't have a pure position. But what about cornerback? Based on their roster right now, post-draft, do you think cornerback play, I understand Latu is going to help and maybe they don't have to cover as much, but do they have enough on the back end?
Unknown, just because they were so young last year. They need to be able to prove it. But last year was just so bad they couldn't cover anybody. And you saw bigger wide receivers torch them last year. If they play Tyreek Hill this year and they do what they did last year, they have no one to stop him. They have potential is the way I'm going to keep it and phrase it until I am proven wrong. They need to prove it first. So they had, based off the board, the way it fell, particularly round 2, I think by about round 2, the cornerbacks kind of fell off because I really wasn't in love with this cornerback class. So the way the board fell, I would have liked to see them take a cornerback higher, but I really don't think there was one that they could take or that they were fine passing and attacking another position. So I need to see it, Ron, with this cornerback group before I commit to any direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if they were going to hit cornerback, they had to do it in the second round or the third round. Once it passed by, they were going to play what they had. One other question, not draft related, but certainly roster related. What do you think quarterback Richardson after playing pretty much 4 or 5 games last year. How do you think he fares, especially at the beginning of the season? I know they tailored their offense to him. They gave him some throws to increase his accuracy. He didn't have a large college resume, roughly 11 starts, and not a large NFL resume, especially compared to this year's quarterbacks. What are your hopes and anticipation for Richardson in 2024?
Even the 4 games sounds like a lot. I had to go look up how many games he played. He started 4 games, and in those 4 games, he got hurt in 2 of them. So this guy has played 11 quarters in the NFL, not 12, 11. This guy is still raw. I'm calling a rookie plus year because since he didn't play last year, he doesn't have much experience. This is the offseason where I think he can develop and learn the system more because he played, I believe, about 14-ish games in college at Florida. So this guy has about 17 games under his belt as a starting quarterback. So he's going to be raw. There were moments last year where he looked really promising throwing the ball. He was erratic, but again, in the Florida system, he didn't have to throw. But Shane Steichen and co. really were trying to maximize his talents with the RPO game, getting the ball out quick. And he kept his eyes down the field when moving out of the pocket. Now, the throws weren't very good sometimes, but he was trying to play quarterback. And that's why I wanted to see with him last year. I expected a raw rookie where he will show flashes of the talent. And then other times you will ask yourself, what is this guy doing? So this offseason, I want to see Shane Steichen and co. have a full playbook with Anthony Richardson. I want to see Anthony Richardson learn to play quarterback, get the ball out quickly, and learn to stay healthy. There was multiple times last year where he got hit, and I'm like, he's not going to make it long. It's going to be Andrew Luck all over again. So if Shane Steichen can really get the ball out quickly and have Anthony Richardson play the quarterback position and not get unnecessary hit all the time, that's what I want to see this year. If he can improve his accuracy, I would like to see that too. But I just want to see him play quarterback for 14 or 15 games this year. That's my expectations for him.
I want to flip the order a little bit before we get into divisional outlook and season win total outlook. I think it's important to look at this schedule. I'm going to throw 3 or 4 things at you and then your comments on this particular schedule. First of all, their uncommon opponents are Pittsburgh, Denver, and the New York Giants. So those are 3 teams that the rest of the division will not play. And that's pretty comfortable. I know Pittsburgh and Denver, they have aspirations to make the playoffs, but they're hit or miss. But it's not a bad 3 games when you compare it especially to what Houston has to do with a first place schedule. There's a minus 17 rest differential involved with the Colts. So they're going to play not only more compact weeks, but they're going to catch some teams off buys. And because they're not playing the NFC South this year, they're probably going to play better crop of quarterbacks. On the other hand, Dan, they only have one primetime game, and that's in November against the Jets on Sunday Night Football. They have very quick revenge first week against the Texans, a last play revenge. And I like when that revenge comes up right away. And it's a pretty much a Sunday routine schedule. I think that continuity is really good for a team when they're battling in a division that's there for the taking. What's your take on the schedule and how Indianapolis matches up with the other 3 opponents based on the schedule?
The schedule is very erratic. You can look at 4-week stretches and think to yourself, man, that's an easy schedule. And then the next 4 weeks are brutal. There's a 3-week stretch where they draw the Bills, the Jets, and the Lions. Those are all teams with very good quarterbacks and solid rosters overall, but that is later in the year. So you will have time to develop your offense. The Jets are a team who's very fragile. So on paper, as we record this, it looks like a tough team, but that's a team, if they have an injury or two, they might fall off a cliff again. The Bills have roster issues, and the Lions, I think, are very good again this year. So that's a tough opponent. But in the first 4 weeks, you had the Texans, who have still no film on Anthony Richardson. So if you want to throw in some wrinkles in that offense, I doubt the Texans will be prepared for them. Week 2, you do go to Green Bay, but the Green Bay Packers are coming from that Brazil game. Does the long travel affect them? I don't know yet because we've never seen it before. And there's another game early in the year when they go to Jacksonville, but Jacksonville is going to London the next week. So is that a situation where Jacksonville is caught sleeping? Maybe they don't show up for that game. Maybe they just have a bad game. So there are stretches in that schedule that you don't see right away where you could catch a team sleeping. The three common opponents, the Steelers are early too, and I know they have a new offensive line, and I give it about 5 to 6 weeks for them to gel. The Colts and Steelers will probably be a similar game. They want to run the ball, they want to dominate the trenches, and both teams probably offset it a bit, but this is a schedule where it is manageable for stretches, but you can't be affording to lose to the bad teams on your schedule. So a team like the Giants, who could be better with Daniel Jones, the Broncos will be later in the year, but that's a post-bye with their late bye. But overall, the schedule, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. And when it does get difficult, you will have time with Anthony Richardson by then.
Sounds good. It basically sums up this division. There's a wide range of final performances outcomes for the Indianapolis Colts. The season win total is 8.5, pretty much across the board, a little bit slanted to the under. The divisional odds, the best I've seen right now, is about plus 340 to win the South Division. Any thoughts on those two, divisional or season wins?
You need 3 different handicaps when you do those futures. How do you feel about Anthony Richardson? How do you feel about Joe Flacco? And then how do you feel about both of those if they played about 60-40? If you're not sure, that is a division or a future you should not absolutely play over under the winner, just because it's going to be who's playing quarterback. So if you don't feel confident in really either, then I would just pass the futures altogether and go week by week and pick your spots. If Anthony Richardson plays, let's say, 13 games and he does develop into something, I have a lean to the over. If it's mostly Joe Flacco this year, I have to pass just because Flacco was so turnover worthy last year, just saying, screw it, I'm going to throw the ball with all those interceptions in 5 games. I'm going to lean over 8.5, but it's not very strong because I need to finish up rest of the division. But that division is manageable. Titans are questionable right now with Will Levis, so I do not think the Titans are easy or hard opponent yet. But overall, it is manageable. If everything goes right for the Colts, I could see them going 10-7, 11-6 if everything really went well. But if Anthony Richardson is hurt and Joe Flacco keeps turning over, I wouldn't be surprised if they go 7-10 either.
Yeah, I agree. Wide range of outcomes. I'm a little surprised at how high the divisional odds are. It's something I'm going to keep an eye on as far as their divisional outlook. I think 340 is comfortable. You may lose it, but 340 implies that if you win it 1 out of 3 times, you're still going to make money. Seems a little high for me. Final thoughts, and I'll read these off, give you the scheduling nugget, and then it's your floor to comment on your final thoughts. I think this roster is improved. I like it in a number of areas. They're deeper at safety, wide receiver. They're going to have a good pass rush. They get Richardson back. They're creative. The but is because I don't see them improving at cornerback. I think that's a very vulnerable area. When you play the better quarterbacks in the NFL, they're going to take advantage of the Colts secondary. We've talked about the scheduling advantages and disadvantages. I want to bring up one point here. On November 17th, we talked about their only game in prime time. It's at the New York Jets on Sunday Night Football. In and itself, that's nice. But on December 28th or 29th, they're going to go back to the same stadium to play the New York Giants. I want to point out that teams that travel and play in the same stadium, that they're not outside of their division, but they're going to play in that stadium against the Jets and the Giants twice this year. Typically, believe it or not, there's a comfort level in that second meeting, especially if they won the first meeting, if they beat the Jets. There's going to be a comfort level and a confidence level. This has been kind of a scheduling nugget. If you see that Indianapolis Colts for sure, if they beat the Jets, I think they come in and beat the Giants as well. It's nice to have 2 games in the same stadium like that. It's not unfamiliar ground to them. Normally, AFC versus NFC, you say, wow, they see this team once every 4 years and may see that stadium once every 8 or 12 years because of the home road. But this time they get them back, 2 games in that stadium. I think that's a nugget. And again, my final statement is wide range of possible outcomes. So Dan, your final thoughts on this or any other thoughts related to the Indianapolis Colts?
Wide range of outcomes is correct. That's the best way to keep it right now, just because the quarterback situation unknown. They do have an advantage with this offensive line. They have all 5 guys coming back. I mentioned the left tackle hasn't produced very much, but having continuity on the offensive line, when how many teams lost an offensive lineman or 2 this year? Quite a bit. And on top of all that, they do have depth, I think, on the offensive line. I'm not sure almost any other NFL team can say that outside of maybe 2 or 3 others. They get Jonathan Taylor to start the year, unlike last year when he was holding out. They didn't have him for those first 4-ish weeks until he came back. But I think the offensive line with Anthony Richardson RPO system, I think they're going to look a lot better in the beginning, or at least have a stronger start or a faster start. So when they do come in later in the year versus those better teams, they could beat them. But I need to see it first with Anthony Richardson. With an offensive line, with the continuity, if they start running the ball, that will help your secondary out because they won't be on the field as much and not giving up as many points in these shootouts that you saw last year with them. So if the Colts offensive line can stay largely healthy this year and Anthony Richardson does develop into at least what we saw last year, I think they will be a 10-7-ish team. That sounds right. But again, the floor is 7-10. But overall, the way the division breaks down, Texans are the media darling, which I'm not 100% sold on. You have the issues with Jacksonville. You have Will Levis with the new system this year. So if the Colts won the division, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Just be careful when to bet this team is probably my takeaway in the futures market.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you for all your thoughts with the Colts. I think that while not the greatest division of all time, I think it's going to be a fascinating division to watch. I think the race is going to be closer than people think because there's tape on CJ Stroud. I'll be talking about Houston in about a half an hour, so you can get my full take on Houston. But I think Indianapolis is right in the mix. So thanks for everybody who's watching this live and everybody who watches this later on. The series continues with Houston, like I said, in a half an hour. Special guest Adam Chernoff tomorrow to wrap up the AFC East with the New York Jets, a team that many people are very high on. You can hear Adam's take on it tomorrow. Again, refer back to my YouTube page to hear any of the 10 and 20-minute videos. And Dan, we're still 90 days away from the NFL, but it seems like we're prepping. We're getting excited, aren't we?
Yes, we are. You and I were going at this in February, about a week after the Super Bowl, I think. But this is all part of the process. I would love to do more on these, but again, I have no Wi-Fi in my house, so it makes it very difficult to do work on my phone and copy and paste everything. So, Ron, it never stops.
Never stops, and it's always fun. Thanks again to everybody. See you in about a half an hour with the Houston Texans.